evening and welcome to the Thursday, April 27th, 2023 meeting of the Indian River County Planning and Zoning Commission. We'll call this meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Any additions or deletions from the agenda?
No, sir.
Are we good for a quorum?
We are, but we only have 4, so let the applicants know that they do need a unanimous vote for each item. And
Okay.
we're hoping Mr. Mutual will show as well.
Okay, and what happens if there's not a unanimous?
Well, if it looks like it's going that way, we'll intervene and see what the applicant wants to do.
Okay, very good, very good. The first item is approval of the minutes of the March 9th, 2023 meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Minutes of the March 9th, 2023 meeting are approved. We have 4 agenda items tonight. The first agenda item is an item that is on consent. Does any one of the commissioners wish to move that off of consent?
I do.
All right, so we will have a discussion of the first item, and I'll read that into the record. That is the Delegation non-commercial kennel, and this is a request for administrative permit, use approval for a non-commercial kennel to keep up to 8 chickens at a residential property. Wayne and Sally Delegation are the owner, applicants, and agent. It is located at 455 38th Court. The zoning is RS6, residential single-family up to 6 units per acre. The land use designation is L2, low-density residential 2, up to 6 units per acre. Is there any declaration of ex parte communication referring to this? All right, and I'll swear in any participants that wish to speak on this, please.
Well, can we, find out what the nature of the...
I think maybe if it's just a question, that we can just get the question answered and we can move on.
All right,
If that's
well-
the case, Ms. Mitchell.
Do you want to move that way?
Just have her ask the question.
All right, why would you like to move this from on consent?
Well, I have 2 questions about this. The first one is a process question in terms of how an item gets on the consent agenda. But the question relating to, and we can save that if you want. But
yeah, that could be, yeah.
the second question is, I saw 2 different numbers in terms of how many chickens are allowed. One is on page, page 2, under 4.1. It says a total of 5 or more dogs, cats, rabbits.
Oh, that's
poultry.
okay. I could happily answer that. That's the criteria, and that's a little bit confusing. If you're keeping a total of 5 animals, period, that's what kicks you into the non-commercial kennel.
Okay, so how do you determine 8 chickens?
They have 8 chickens.
Because that's what they have.
Correct. Yes, and that's what they're applying for. Yes, the limit of 5 is and it gets a little more complicated than that, because if you have 5 total animals, 2 of which you keep outside, that you're not considered to have a non-commercial kennel. But it's the minute you're over 5, inside or outside, is when you trigger this requirement.
Okay, all right.
Okay. And just to answer your other question, and so the number is 8 for this particular application because that's what they've applied for. It's staff's discretion to determine what goes on consent or not consent, and we try to just at the level of
Okay.
gravity, if you will. This is a very minor application.
Oh, I know, that's,
So that's why we tried to put it on consent.
yeah, and I was reluctant to pull it because of that, but.
That's all good.
But I did have those questions. All right, you've answered them. Thank you.
Sorry, and for the record,
And
Ryan.
I'll move the item.
Perfect.
Well, I'd like to have one more question, Ryan, if you would, please, sir. What triggered this? Do you know, was it a code enforcement?
Yes.
Was that a drive-by code enforcement, or was it a complaint by neighbors?
I believe it was a complaint.
Okay, and so we're taking this motion to prevent that from happening again in the future?
Or to resolve this current issue.
Okay.
Again, for the record, Ryan Sweeney, Interim Assistant Community Development Director. It's a very long title now. In this particular case, yes, it was a code case that I believe derived from a complaint between the neighbors, but assuming this gets approved, then they've made good on their code case.
On their code case.
Correct.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Them out of trouble. in the
Correct. Yeah, provided they don't surpass their requirements or enlarge the coop or anything like that.
Perfect, thank you.
And so I'll move to approve the item.
So, Mr. DeBral, in the future, when we have items that are on consent,
Yes.
can we just do a discussion without reading it into the record and all of that?
I would think so, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, normally when the Board of County Commissioners has items on consent, the chair will poll the membership to see if anybody has anything that they want to pull off of the consent agenda. They'll also open it up to the public to see if the public would like anything pulled off the consent agenda. If everybody's happy with it, move for approval and second, and you move on.
So what we've done today is we have just asked some questions,
Perfect.
And-
That's exactly what the consent agenda is for.
and we're done.
We're done.
And so should we
you should
move for
vote.
approval?
You should,
Or-
there's been a motion for approval and a second. All you have to do is vote on it now.
Yeah, she's moved for approval twice. And we've got a
Robert-
second, all in
second.
favor? Aye.
Aye.
So we're good for the consent item.
You are good.
Thank you.
Yep, excellent. All right, so we've got three items that are not on consent, and I think I'm on firm ground here. So the first is Coastal Oak Preserves, and this is a request for a major site plan and administrative permit use approval for a public park and preserve area. Indian River Land Trust Incorporated is the owner. Carter Associates Incorporated is the agent. This is located on the east side of US Highway 1, abutting the southern property line of the Grove Isle subdivision. The zoning is RM6, residential multifamily up to 6 units per acre, and RS6, residential single-family up to 6 units per acre. The land use designation is L2, low-density residential 2, up to 6 units per acre. Any declaration of ex parte communications? None. Anyone who would like to speak on this issue, please stand and be sworn in. And we'll have staff presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our senior planner, Brandon Cragen, will present this item.
All right. Good evening, Chair and members of the board. Before you today is the Coastal Oaks Preserve with administrative permit use and major site plan. The property is located east of South US Highway 1, directly south of the Grove Isle subdivision. It has a split zoning of RM6 and RS6. On screen is an aerial of the site to give you an overlay of what the site plan is going to look like in relation to its surroundings. As you can see, most of the property around it is vacant, and to the north is that subdivision that I mentioned. Site plan is mostly going to be a semi-public private park. The majority of the functions on this site plan is going to be for preservation purposes. So preservation of existing wetlands, creation of new wetlands, preservation of existing trees, and the creation of new native trees. So basically it's kind of a park, educational kind of feature to it. So there isn't too much to the site plan tonight. They also are providing a pavilion, and there's also a parking area for guests as well. The traffic circulation plan calls for a primary entrance onto US Highway 1. There's a standard internal loop road all the way to the parking area. There's going to be one emergency access road that will give emergency vehicles access to the proposed pavilion, or if in the future they decide they want to come back through the AA process and add maybe another pavilion or more buildings, it will just give that ability so if emergency services need to get back there, they can get back there. There's also going to be a southbound left turn lane onto US Highway 1. This isn't a requirement of the project, and there was not a traffic study that was required because it did not trip the 400 daily trip requirement that we have for a traffic study, but the applicant wanted to add this left turn lane into the project to give residents another way to access when they're going southbound. Landscape plan is very standard for this one. Since it is a preserve and they're going to have a lot of landscaping, the only requirement that they needed to have was a 20-foot thoroughfare roadway landscape buffer. I'd also like to take special note that the special land use criteria that govern public parks pursuant to section 971.40 subsection 7, all of the standards for this section are complied with on this site plan, so I can verify that as well. So staff recommends that the Plan and Zoning Commission grant administrative permit use and major site plan approval with the conditions stated in the staff report. Those conditions are related to a unity of title that will be required for all of the parcels that make up the project. The letter of concurrence from the Florida Division of Historical Resources, that will be something that the environmental planning team will monitor and handle. Landscape buffers and improvements, and finally, any lighting improvements. I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Brandon. Any questions?
Yes, I do.
All right, Chip, we'll start with you.
Can you go back to the slide for the aerial showing the surrounding properties? Okay, and the property to the south of this is what?
It's a DOT stormwater pond. And then south of that is another residential subdivision.
Okay. Why are they not using the roadway that's in existence?
That's the actual, if I could, Mr. Chair, again, for the record, Ryan Sweeney, interim assistant community development director. Mr. Landers, that's just like a dirt pathway, but their actual driveway cut that's on US 1 is where the median opening is, way at the south end there. So they didn't want to redo that. That's a paved driveway apron.
Okay, and then the emergency access, can you show that again, please?
It's the one that's kind of double laned, if you will. It's to highlight it, to show what it actually is.
Okay, but I see where it stops, but where does it connect to the?
Back to the solid purple.
Okay, back to the solid purple, okay.
Yeah, the solid purple is the main road. The stuff that's outlined, if you will, is just a stabilized path.
Okay,
That good, Chip?
yes, sir.
Anyone else? Yes, sir. Go ahead. Yep.
Just a small technical question. It has a proposed entry gate with posts 1.5 feet off of the roadway. What kind of roadway is that, if you would? Is that a paved?
So the 1.5 feet is off the entrance road.
Off the end? Correct, off the side of the road, correct?
Correct.
And is
That's-
that going to be, well,
paved
from what I understand, it has to have a non-mountable curb to be 1.5 feet away, as opposed to a Miami curb or a non-done. So, I mean, in the past, on the developments I've worked on, that's been a condition.
We do have the applicant here. Again, I know it's a paved apron. I don't know to what extent, if it's a curbed entrance.
Okay.
Please state your name and address and answer the question.
Tyler Spencer, project engineer with Carter Associates, 1708 21st Street, Vero Beach. Thank you to staff and the board for hearing our project this evening. So it is, like Ryan was mentioning, it's a stabilized, it's a paved apron there at the entry, and then it transitions into a stabilized drive. And, you know, it's part of the overall effort to preserve the land to, instead of paving, you know, the entire driveway, and we're
Sure.
utilizing stabilized material. And to specifically answer your question, we're going to use caprock that's found on site. So we are providing the same, you know, technical
Protection.
specifications for protection for those gate posts, but we're, again, requesting that we're able to use some of the on-site material, so caprock, that it's going to exceed that 6-inch that you would normally see with a Type D curb. So we do incorporate that on our plans.
Thank you.
You good?
I'm good, sir.
Anyone else?
I do actually have another question.
Yep, go ahead.
On the entranceway, and I see the loop through there, and I know with the residential neighborhoods, if there's a gate or something, you've got to have a turnaround area for the people that mistakenly drive into that. Is that something that's offered as well?
Yes, that's a turnaround. That is a turnaround if they're denied entry.
Okay.
You can loop,
Back
yeah, the
around.
gate itself, it's hard, maybe if you can see my cursor, see the proposed, if you see the X with the line, that's the
Okay.
gated fenced area, so the gate, so yes, if you're denied entry, you loop back around that single lane and go back out.
Okay. Thank you.
And from what I understand it, and don't correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, it's owned by the land trust, but it's gonna function essentially like a county park. There's a limited, dusk to dawn hours, maybe closed for special events or school events, but, so it is possible that people will pull off, see that the park is closed, and then loop back around.
Okay.
Anyone else? Open the floor to public comment, if anyone would like to make a public comment. Yep.
So again, Tyler Spencer, project engineer with Carter Associates. Just to elaborate a little further, it's being approved as a public park, but the primary use for the land trust is going to be conservation, events, for education. So primarily, the site is going to be used for those purposes through the land trust. They have, quite a few sites throughout the county. This one in particular is focused on, preservation and education. It has great access to the lagoon, so they can bring out, Harbor Branch, hold events there with access to the lagoon and that sort of thing. So I just wanted to clarify a little bit that primary use is going to be for land trust functions and events, and yeah. But I'd be happy
Great.
to answer any questions.
Question, you all mentioned it as a park, per se. So what is the availability to the general public?
So I'm joined tonight by Ken Grudens, Executive Director of the Land Trust. I believe it's going to be limited, just to be straightforward with you. It can be provided in certain circumstances for public use, but at least my understanding is it'll be limited. So, yeah.
And Ken, before you answer, just from a zoning and criteria and those things, this is where it falls. But it's to be clear, it's not open to the public 24/7 kind of thing. It's at their
Correct.
discretion.
Ken Grudens, Executive Director of the Indian River Land Trust, 80 Royal Palm Point, Suite 301, Vero Beach, Florida. And I do thank you for considering this project. And as Tyler mentioned, the Land Trust has a number of dawn to dusk kind of properties that are open with trailheads, some with the county and some individually, 3 altogether. This is a special concept and vision here. This is a living classroom. This property, and you can't really see it, but the whole property that we own is actually 226 acres, and it's got every habitat you can find in the region. And we already have a partner, Harbor Branch Oceanographic Institute, and a program called the Junior Scientist Program. And that's going to be one of the programs we're going to be holding out there. So this is a special place for events. When Tyler says events, it's really educational events where we have kids come out. You might have 8, 10, 15 kids come out. We likely have partners that will run programs out there, but the gates won't be opened on the dusk. And we do hope that there'll be some opportunities for maybe in the nicer part of the year and on a Saturday to have it maybe open and docents on the property and people be able to come and explore and see how this place is and bring some life, some interest around it. But this is a pretty special place that I think a lot of people are going to, over time, have a chance to experience and learn and help to be better stewards for our land and our lagoon.
So,
Can he stay at the mic a second when
yeah, go ahead. You
I
have a
ask a
question?
question? Perked my interest. I'm on the school board. I'm also a science teacher. So my question is, I'm looking at this saying, is there enough parking for buses? Do you plan on that?
Tyler, do you?
There's an ability to.
Yeah, so Ryan or Brandon, whoever's in control, if you could go to our site plan. We have provided bus parking, yep, kind of where the cursor is there. There's a pull-off for 1 to 2 buses to fit there. Additionally, we kind of have a pull-off area along that emergency access that'll also provide, a location for the parking.
Okay, next question then, thank you. Will you have like an outdoor classroom covered for school groups to come out?
So that's the
'cause that's all I have.
proposed
Okay.
pavilion there, yeah.
Okay.
That'll serve that purpose there.
And who do we contact to have this happen? After the meeting, could I see you? Thank you.
So Orca is kind of a dawn to dusk park. So this is going to be more like a scheduled educational center. And I guess who to contact is
Is what I'd like to
critical
know.
once this gets going, yeah.
Very exciting, thank you.
Anyone else like to speak from the public?
Good evening. I'm Joseph Paladin. I'm speaking and representing the Indian River Neighborhood Association, the RNA, and we support this project. We think it's a good idea, and we support it 100%.
Thank you, Joe. Anyone else? All right, we'll close the floor for public comment. Any other questions from commissioners? I mean, I've been on this commission for a long time, and projects like this are few and far between, so I am really happy to see something like this. So I'll go ahead and call for a motion and a vote.
Move to approve.
Move to approve? Second? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously.
Yay.
Thank you. All right, our third agenda item is a Le Crevier commercial kennel, and this is a request for a major site plan and administrative permit use approval of a commercial dog kennel, 50 dogs with 27 dogs allotted for the overnight accommodations. Ganelli Le Crevier is the owner. Sunshine State Engineering LLC is the agent. It is located on the south side of First Street Southwest between 58th Avenue and 66th Avenue Southwest. The zoning is A1 Agricultural 1 up to 1 unit per 5 acres. The land use designation is AG1 Agricultural 1 up to 1 unit per 5 acres. Any declaration of ex parte communications? None. Anyone who would like to speak on this, please be sworn in. And we're ready for staff presentation.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Our senior planner, Brandon Cragen, will present this item as well.
Good evening, Chair and members of the board. Before you today is the Le Crevier Commercial Kennel with administrative permit use and major site plan. This property is on the south side of First Street Southwest. It has a zoning of A1, which is one of our agricultural zoning districts. On screen is an aerial of the site to show you how the site will be, or the site plan will be overlaid with the existing conditions. You can see there's some vacant property and also some single-family residential homes nearby. Site plan will provide a proposed kennel building that will allow up to 50 dogs during the day, with 27 of those dogs being allowed to stay for overnight only. The type of animals that will be serviced will be dogs only. There will be no cats, chickens, or any other animals that are a part of this approval. There's also going to be some proposed dog runs that are on the east and south side of the building. There's also going to be a proposed future residence that will be for whoever is going to run the dog kennel. The traffic circulation plan is calling for one primary entrance onto First Street Southwest that will lead into the parking lot that will then lead into the driveway for the future single-family home. Stormwater plan calls for a proposed retention pond on the northern edge of the property, and then there's also going to be compensatory storage where you see that big blue area that meanders towards the south. The landscape plan is going to call for our required 20-foot thoroughfare roadway landscape buffer. There's also going to be one type C buffer that will be on the western edge of the property, separating the property from the parking lot. And then there's also going to be a type C buffer that is going to go around the south and eastern portions of the dog runs. The reason why you don't see a type C buffer on the northern or the western portion of the dog runs is because those are already being buffered by landscape, and so there wasn't a need to landscape them even further. And also, these buffers are also going to provide for noise abatement as well. Oh, one last thing I'd like to mention is that this specific use of commercial kennel is governed by the special land use criteria in section 971.08, subsection 7 of our county land development regulations, and it does comply with all of these land development regulations. With that, staff recommends that the Plan and Zoning Commission grant administrative permit use and major site plan approval with the conditions stated in the staff report. These conditions are related to hours that animals must remain inside during the evening, the supervision of animals, the limit of dogs on site for day, which is 50, and overnight, which is 27. It's also related to landscape buffers and improvements and lighting improvements. I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Brandon. Commissioner, questions? Got a question here?
Yeah, under the note of dogs, the amount of dogs, 50 total and 27 overnight, I noticed that the capacity was reviewed and approved by animal control. Is there any other parameters, or how do they get to these numbers?
I'm glad you asked, if you don't mind. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, for the record, Ryan Sweeney, Chief, I'm now Chief, I give myself a demotion. Interim Assistant Community Development Director. Beth, so I asked that question because it's not a very straightforward formula. So first of all, it's not one of the items that are listed in our specific land use criteria, as simple as, X square feet per dog. It's a combination of, I believe, and I'm paraphrasing, but I did speak with Jason Ogilvy over at Animal Control, and it's size of dog, and then they're required to have a certain amount of interior and exterior space. And so it's kind of a blended combination of those things. But we confirmed twice with him that it meets those requirements. I don't believe there's any state level regulations, but they'll also need to, they'll have to maintain registration and all of those things in state business licenses.
How do you enforce something like that?
I mean, it's a sort of a, if it's 51 on a given day, it is what it is, but
More about the dogs that are overnight.
again, it's one of those where, trust but verify. So if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does, thank you.
Those were my
Yep,
questions.
go, yeah, thanks, Beth. I have no questions. Anyone else?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Chip.
And again, it's not your department, but so the reasoning is 50 dogs of certain sizes.
Well, again, it's if you have large dogs require more interior and exterior space. Medium and small require less. So, based on the size of the building and the dog runs, and the reason there's 3 different ones is they're for the different size of breeds. That's how they arrived at the formula.
Okay, and not assuming anything, but the property to the west, is that owned by the same party?
It is not. The sub here, yeah. Now north is back to the up. The subject site and the parcel to the immediate south, and then the 2 parcels to the west. Those were all created fairly recently through an AOE. The parcels to the west are vacant right now. The parcel to the south is obviously at this point, given where the aerial is in January of this year, that home's probably completely done now.
But they're both using the same access?
Yes, it's a shared access, correct, with a paved apron on First Street, because First Street Southwest is paved.
And the party that is to the south, that's a separate individual as well?
Correct, yes, yeah, and
Flag lot,
once,
the
yes,
flag, yeah.
correct. And it's either dirt or stabilized, but that's a long run of private driveway.
Yeah,
Good, Chip?
I'm sorry,
Yep.
just got one question. How far is that? Well, what I sort of liked was the fact that the kennel is eventually going to be partially blocked by the future residents. And then you've got how many feet between the residents and the end of the property line there? I mean, it looks considerable.
I
700
figured someone might
from
ask
there.
that. It's about 700 feet.
From the kennel
To the
That
nearest,
house?
to the nearest homes, correct.
Okay.
And then the house to the north on, across First Street, but diagonally is about 400 feet. These are give or take, but they're pretty
They're
close.
good 5 acre lots, most of them are
All
more.
of them are 5 acres or larger.
Those are tall fences around the outside?
Correct,
Those
yes.
tall fences?
Yes, there's a 6-foot chain link fence around each dog run.
Large, medium, and small are defined by weight.
Yes, and I'll defer back to animal control. I didn't get into the specifics, but yes, it's by weight.
Okay, all right. Any other questions? I'll open the floor for public comment. Anyone who would like to comment on this, please come forward, name and address.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jonathan Rodeback from Dill Evans and Rodeback. I represent the applicant, Ganelle LaCraver. We have tonight Ms. LaCraver. We have the project engineer, TJ Tiedemann. I believe you need my address. It's 1565 Sebastian. It's all set forth in your memorandum. I'm not going to belabor the point. This meets the qualifications under the Indian River County Code. It addresses the concerns I believe that you commissioners may have, but any technical questions, any further things you would like us to elaborate on, we'll do the best that we can tonight. But otherwise, we respectfully request that you approve tonight. Thank you so much.
Do you know what the large, medium, and small weight distribution is?
I do not know how to calculate that numbers, and I'm not sure if you, Ms. LaCraver, have.
It's more complicated than it sounds for some reason.
Yeah.
It.
So, Ganelle LaCraver, I'm the applicant. The weights depend, of course, on also the character of the dog. So, of course, we're not going to put a German Shepherd with a Chihuahua because the Chihuahua is going to attack the German Shepherd, and then the German Shepherd is going to eat the Chihuahua. So, but basically, it's, big dogs, medium dogs. So medium dog could be a pit bull. Some pit bulls are pretty small, actually, most of them are. A large dog would be a German Shepherd, Great Dane, and then the smaller dogs, of course, all the, little yappers that think they're big.
Yep.
So that's basically how it's determined at first. When we accept the dog, we have a meeting with that dog, with other dogs, to see their aggressivity level, because some bigger dogs can't actually be with bigger dogs. They need to be with medium dogs because they don't know how to, they're scared of bigger dogs because they don't know they're big. So it's basically each dog has to be considered on its own, on top of its weight.
Yeah, I understand large, small, medium, and large, but somewhere there has to be a weight distribution for
There,
those.
actually, I have not found one.
Huh,
I was cut and dry.
huh,
Can I ask one question? Because I remember.
sure.
There was a kennel out by there actually it was off of Oslo Road, but pretty close to where this is, years ago, where I had my dog when we were out of town. But we could hear the dogs from a ways away. So will these dogs have to be inside at night?
At night, they will be inside.
And you have enough of a buffer that you're sure you're not going to have their neighbors complain?
Well, on top of the buffer, the house, the building, which is going to look like a house, is being built in ICF, which is, it's not really a new kind of construction, but it's a very interesting kind of construction. It's 2 pieces of styrofoam that are about 6 inches wide. They're put together, they're held together by a bracket, then they're piled up like a Lego house, and then they pour concrete inside.
But that's for the house, that's not for
No,
the...
that's a kennel.
Oh, that's the kennel,
Yes.
okay,
The house is going to be the same, but the kennel is also going to be built like this.
interesting.
It is hurricane resistant up to 250 mile per hour winds. And it is so insulated that I could literally have a rock band playing all night and no one would hear. Wow. And the windows are impact, the doors are impact. And once I'm open, I want to actually approach the county to make it a hurricane shelter.
The school district would entertain that.
Well, for people with animals,
Yes.
so that, people can come with their animals and set up, cots and whatnot.
Right now, we're using a school to do that. And then we have to keep the
Paul, you have
school.
a question?
I guess that if there'd be a rock band in there, it'd be Three Dog Night.
Oh, Bills.
Oh, no. Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? We'll close the public portion of the hearing. Any additional commissioner questions? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Passes unanimously. One item left. And this is the pertaining commercial parking. It is a request for administrative permit use approval for an automated parking and storage facility. Pertaining property of Indian River County LLC is the owner. MBV Engineering Incorporated is the agent. This is located at the southwest corner of 27th Avenue and 6th Street Southwest. It's 27th Avenue Southwest and 6th Street Southwest. The zoning is CL, limited commercial. The land use designation is CI, commercial industrial. Any declaration of ex parte communications? None. We'll swear in the participants who would like to speak on this. And we'll have staff presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a request for administrative permit use and major site plan approval for an automotive parking and storage facility in the CL zoning district. Most of you will recall that this is tied to a LDR amendment that was just passed. I believe it was recommended for approval by you all probably 5-6 months ago, and then ultimately approved by the board probably at the end of last calendar year. So this is the same applicant group that actually submitted that LDR amendment. This was their plan all along, but the LDR, of course, needed to change first. And it created not a new section. We had the automobile parking and storage line item, if you will, in the use table, but it was not allowed in certain lesser intense commercial zoning districts, and staff ultimately recommended that it is allowed, but as an administrative permit use with certain criteria. The project site is located at the south west corner of 27th Avenue and 6th Street Southwest, and again, it is zoned CL, limited commercial. Here is an aerial depicting the existing conditions of the site, and again, it's effectively just a parking lot with stormwater and landscape. A very nice parking lot, albeit, but it's a parking lot. The site plan showing the proposed improvements and sidewalk along 6th Street Southwest and 27th Ave, as well as a crosswalk to the office, the cleaning service office, which is on the north side of 6th Street Southwest. The sidewalk's not required along 28th Avenue Southwest because it's not a paved road. Traffic circulation plan includes a driveway connection to 6th Street Southwest, which is the lesser functioning road, and again, that sidewalk connection and crosswalk for pedestrian access back to the office site. Stormwater plan includes two small stormwater areas, one in the center of the site and one at the south central side of the site. The landscape plan proposes a thoroughfare plan / local road buffer along 27th Avenue, which is a thoroughfare plan road, 6th Street Southwest, which is a local road, and then a type C buffer between the site and the residential zoning further to the west. And as Brandon mentioned in his other items, I'll do so as well. The site is an administrative permit use, so it is required to meet the specific land use criteria. In this case, 971.13 subsection 6, which is all newly created criteria that was created by the LDR amendment, and the site and associated items meet those criteria. And with that, staff's recommendation is that the Planning and Zoning Commission grant administrative permit use approval with the conditions stated in the staff report, installing all landscaping, lighting, and site improvements prior to issuance of a site CO. There's no building, but we do have a site CO process. And then site lighting adjustments may be required after installation for just to maintain compliance with the no glare requirements onto adjacent properties. And that's my presentation.
Thank you, Ryan. Any commissioner questions? Start over here.
Yes, sir.
All right.
The site lighting adjustments, is that going to be like dark sky lighting required at this point in time?
It's not quite that extreme. Dark sky is more for like turtle lighting, but it's just a continuing requirement that is in perpetuity once the site's built. That if there was a complaint or someone, unfortunately sometimes vans or small light duty trucks back into light poles and kind of knock the light poles out of whack. They have to adjust them accordingly.
And then on the stormwater retention, what kind of parameters were put on those for site? I don't see any place that would run off in a 100 or 200 year event. So if we can get
Sure, the project engineer is here. I don't know if they're retaining 100% on site or if they're outfalling, but he'll be able to tell you that.
okay.
Once we're done with questions, staff will bring the applicants up.
Super.
You good?
I'm good. Yeah.
Great. Any questions on this side?
Believe it or not, I know, I'm talking a lot tonight. I never talk.
Fantastic.
Well, this one is on the west side of 27th Avenue, correct?
Correct.
Okay, because I know the school district owns property on the other side, so I just wanted to find out how far it is from that property. And I do know this area. This is right now it's an empty lot.
Correct.
Okay, and just south of it is a business strip center.
Correct.
Little small
Yes,
strip
and then
center?
that ultimately leads into the Winn-Dixie Plaza. It's hard. Well, there's a couple detached buildings, and then I thought the strip center that I'm sorry. Yeah, there's a little bit of a smaller.
I live around the corner from
Yeah, yeah.
that, so I know. There's like
Yeah.
a little strip center, and then there's another separate building,
There's a
the
couple.
Beverage
yes,
Mart,
correct,
and then
yeah.
there's another strip center, and then there's
And,
Winn-Dixie.
yes.
Okay, I think I know where this is. Okay, as long as it's west, I have
Yes,
no other
it is.
questions, because it's away from the school district's property.
Correct.
Good. Anyone else on this side?
Just a question regarding the buffering on the south side, that seems to be substantially different than the other location.
Right. That is commercial zoning, so the buffering is reduced. They do have still. I mean, they're still doing a pretty. I didn't highlight it, which doesn't do it justice, but there's still, a solid row, a double row of shrubs and trees, but the buffering is reduced because it's commercial to commercial.
Good, Chip. Anyone else? All right, I'll open the floor for public comment, and I think we've got a question on the floor.
Good evening, Chair and the Board. I'm Ryan McLean with MBV Engineering. As mentioned by Mr. Sweeney, we are the agent for the project. So your first question, Mr. Bautau, is addressing stormwater. So yes, the site contains 2 dry retention ponds interconnected. Ultimate outfall is into 6th Street Southwest drainage system, which discharges to the 27th Avenue Southwest and to the north. Actually, this is one of the few spots where it splits, because as Ms. Berenberg didn't talk about, but probably knows well, 27th Avenue Southwest discharges to the south towards the Winn-Dixie, and they have some varying stormwater concerns. This actually is directed to the north, ultimately. But the site is retained for the 25-year and 24-hour storm analysis for pre-post, as well as we modeled the 100-year. It does retain on-site, but ultimately there is a discharge component.
Okay. So there's a weir station there that discharges.
Yeah, there's actually there's a structure on-site that controls it, and then ultimately discharges to an existing structure in the 16th Street Southwest. We're not actually open cutting 6th Street. 6th Street
Okay.
Southwest.
Okay. So it's existing already around it.
Yes, the 6th Street already has a ditch system that controls the existing development.
Perfect. Yeah, I used to live off of Oslo Road, right there at that intersection, so I was like, okay, yeah, sometimes that would get
Yeah.
pretty wet. I mean, I think this is an improvement over the dirt lot that the cleaning company does. I think it buffers that, as opposed to, I think it cuts down the dust, the dirt that gets stirred up in the morning when they're all coming in and going out. And I believe that's what the purpose of this is for. Is that correct?
100%. We've been involved with, it was originally as a code case issue that was obviously from that process. And it only seems drawn out because of, as Ryan mentioned, the LDR process.
LDR.
Right.
So that kind of really put a 12-month stopgap in the middle
Sure.
of the approval. Yeah.
Been there.
Good, any other questions? Thank you. Joe?
I'm the owner's rep on this project. I've been with this project for about 3 years. And from the very beginning, we worked with staff, and worked with the county, and worked with code enforcement. This solves a multitude of problems besides the dust issue and the parking lot was empty and people just hanging out there. This will be a secured issue, secured parking lot. It'll be an opaque feature around the entire perimeter of the parking lot. So besides it being secure, it'll be opaque, it'll have landscaping, it'll have lighting that'll be approved by the county. And all the things that the county asked for the last 3 years, we've accommodated them, we've agreed to everything that they required. There's not one single thing that we cut on this thing. We went full bore. It's gonna have a nice entry, be secured, and it'll be a nice place, and it'll take care of a code enforcement issue too, because there's trucks being parked outside and what have you, and now that's solved. It won't be there anymore. So besides it being good for the business, where they employ 90 people, by the way, it's gonna be good for code enforcement, because it'll solve the code enforcement issue. Thank you. Any questions?
Good, any questions for Joe from the commissioners?
What was the total parking number?
66, I think.
Of course, I didn't put it in the staff report. I believe you're right. Yeah, 66.
Yeah.
Spaces.
Great, any other public comment? Good, we'll close the public comment section. Any additional commissioner questions?
Just a brief one, if you don't mind.
All right, Chip?
There was a mention about access to the property. Is there, from a security standpoint, is there fencing around it as well as the buffer, or?
It's not a gated entrance. It's just more secure with lighting. It's a secure in the sense that it's not an open field, if that makes sense.
All right, but it's the buffering, the buffering is the.
The buffering is the buffer, if you will, to entering the site. But yeah, it's access controlled. Right now, it's a little bit of just free for all.
This is a big improvement.
It's a defined entrance both for pedestrian as well as vehicular.
Are there any plans for security cameras out there?
That I can't speak to. I mean, they're gonna have a number of streetlight poles, so they could certainly accommodate it.
Certainly put that on there. Okay. No, I think it's,
Okay, we good?
I'm good, sir.
All right, I'll call for a motion.
A motion to approve?
Got a motion to approve?
Second.
Got a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Very good, very good.
Thank you all. I appreciate your being here and helping us.
Thank you. Commissioner matters, I know there's at least one. Beth,
I do have
all right.
a matter. In the last week or so, I've become very aware of a project up in the Sebastian area. And this project was under discussion at the city council meeting last night. It's all over social media. And my question is perhaps a little bit of a refresher in terms of how we interact with the public during this process, because I understand it's not ready to come to us.
And yeah, I'm sure I know what project you're talking about because we've heard quite a lot about it too. So I'll let Bill weigh in on some advice as well. But as we see it, it's actually not slated to come to P&Z. It can be approved at the staff level. However, if it were to be appealed, I think it would start here, the appeal.
Which project?
This is the hotel project.
Oh, okay. Is that within the city limits?
No, it's in the county. It's county
Actually
jurisdiction.
in the county.
It's in the county.
But it affects
Okay.
the city of Sebastian and their roadways. So I believe that's why Beth is, and myself are concerned about, the process and getting it through.
I mean, it'd be a major site plan,
Correct.
correct?
But it would be approvable at the staff level. I would err on the side of caution, for obvious reasons, but also that like I said, I think if it were appealed, it would be appealed to you also. It's entirely.
So let's take that step and assume that it is going to be here. Are there things that we need to avoid as commissioners in terms of interacting with the public or with Sebastian elected officials or anybody?
Good question. It had come to us on appeal as a quasi judicial matter, I believe. You would be sitting as a judge. You would be required to weigh the facts and the evidence that's presented both in the staff report and the testimony that you would hear at the hearing, and you would have to be fair and impartial. If you don't believe, because of your involvement in the project one way or another, that you could be that way, I think it would hurt your credibility as far as anything is concerned. Recusal, usually that's just limited to family members or monetary gain type of thing there. Would I suggest that a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission be on the board of those opposed to the hotel or whatever? No, I wouldn't recommend that for any project, no matter where it is or anything like that. Does that mean that you can't get involved in your HOA? No, your HOA isn't going to come before you. But anything that you see maybe could come before this commission, you probably want to avoid getting too deeply involved in it. Or, just flat out at the beginning say, hey, look, I'm way too involved in this project. It's right next door to me. I'm going to recuse myself and sit out. I'm not going to give any input on it or discuss it at all.
And how does the appeal process happen? Who sends it before us, and how does it get to that point, just for my edification?
It would be, Ryan would go ahead and send out the staff approval.
Correct, yeah. So it would ultimately, assuming it meets all criteria and everything else that we being staff and ultimately community development director issues an approval, an aggrieved party would have the ability to appeal the decision of the community development director. And then there's a process.
And I would assume that just like in other projects that that if someone would want to be copied on the information, that they would give their email addresses and everything like that to Ryan and his folks to stay abreast of the project.
And that's primarily just informational items. I mean, we're not, you get everything that everybody else gets. We're not packaging up anything special, so to speak.
So there would also be an ex parte declaration
That's correct.
for that, and that declaration may recuse you.
Well, I think it would have to rise to the level of either it goes to your economic gain or loss, that the project would, or that a family member is involved with the project, mother, brother, father, all the way down the line there and everything like that. Or that your property abuts the development that would prevent you from, making a decision that wouldn't be influenced. If you come here with a certain influence, I would say that you're probably not the best person to go ahead and rule on the matter. So you want to try and refrain from being influenced by the project and coming here with a predetermined opinion before you hear the evidence.
But if you're a member, let's say a member of a group that's formed that's not necessarily has approval of the project, would you have to disclose that you're a member of that, and would that disqualify you?
I would disclose that I'm a member. For example, if the Sebastian Exchange Club would come out in opposition to this, you would disclose that you're a member of the Exchange Club of Sebastian, but I can still rule with an open mind.
Is this flushed out as much as you want it flushed out, or you want to go deeper?
Just one more question, and it has to, this has showed up on social media before we have heard a word about it.
Showed up before we've even had a chance to dive into it, so.
And what I'm seeing on social media is documents that you all are getting and the whole 9 yards. So are there any special rules about social media that we need to be concerned about?
I would trust the source as being coming from us.
Yes, but I would refrain from going on social media and saying, as a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission, or, you know, Mr. Votaw, I know that you're involved in this as well. I'd like you to go ahead and comment on it to avoid the sunshine law problems.
Okay. I think I have enough. I just, I wanted to have that discussion because it does look like it's blowing up.
That's fine, and you raise very good points, and I'm glad that's very well
My
done.
trust in social media is anything but trusting.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people jump to conclusions without facts and without information, and I believe that that's on social media all over. And if they're commenting on something that hasn't even been applied for and things, how do I even, you know, I don't give much account to it. But the facts I like listening to and knowing and then making a good determination. And Beth, I'm with you, you know, being in Sebastian myself now, have those concerns about it coming hopefully before us to where, as a Planning and Zoning Commission, we can have some input. So that's where I stand on that.
And please remember that our office is open to any type of questions from any commission members on sunshine law, open meetings, or anything else. So, you know, please call us. It's not a problem at all.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
What's social media?
Good way to approach it. Avoid it.
Very good, very good. That was great. Any other commissioner matters? Any planning matters?
None other than I'm not anticipating having the first meeting in May, and not sure if we have anything lining up for the second meeting, but what we've tried to do is, if we can have some patient applicants, to try to get as many projects on a single meeting as possible. So probably don't count on having a first meeting in May, but maybe one in the second meeting in May.
Any attorney matters?
No, sir.
Thank you, commissioners. We are adjourned. Great meeting.